If you're a Superman fan, you're going to want to watch this video because I'm talking about the most significant event in the history of Superman, which is the death and return of Superman. I want to talk about the comics and everything leading up to this, and then what I think about the event overall and this what's actually contained in this omnibus. I do have this, what is this, Superman? This is Superman 75, signed by Brett Breeding, the artist on this issue. And this is the issue. It's a key issue. This is the issue when Superman actually dies fighting Doomsday. Sorry, that's a spoiler. I know, but this is 30 years old now, so I think that's kind of okay. But I love having this book in my collection. Dan Jurgens is actually coming to Heroes Con, which is the comic book convention in Charlotte that I usually go to. So I'm almost thinking about just cracking this and having him sign this book as well. I think that would be pretty cool because Dan Jurgens and Brett Breeding are the two creators on this, and I already have it signed by Brett Breeding. Anyway, all that said, overall, I like the event of the death and return of Superman. I like the omnibus, but I have some mixed feelings about it, and I just want to share my opinion on the Omni and the story overall. Okay, this is the death and return of Superman omnibus. So the first thing I want to do before we get into the story and everything else in the comics leading up to it is just talk about the build of this Omni, briefly. And this is actually one of my favorite omnibuses on my shelf. And if you've seen my collection, it's huge. So that's actually saying something. I have most omnibuses that are out. DC makes quality omnis. I mean, I love that most of this is a matte black finish, and then you have the shiny reflective part, which is like Superman's cape and the title. And that kind of same thing is going on here, where the Superman logo is reflective and everything else is matte black. So in terms of like build quality, this is really awesome. Actually, like I said, one of my favorite books that I own. Before I get into this, I want to talk about some of the comics leading up to it. Now, I haven't read all the comics that are leading up to it. I've read some, and I plan on reading them in the future. I'm kind of doing this in reverse in a way because I read this, and then I have this Omni that I'm planning on reading soon, and this comes right before the death of Superman. But what comes right before this are these books. Okay, this is Man of Steel by John Byrne, right? Volumes 1 through 4. So where this volume leaves off, where the fourth volume leaves off, which is at Superman 22 and Adventures of Superman 444, this guy picks up literally right. This one picks up at Superman 23 and Adventures of Superman 445. So these books lead directly into the exile of Superman Omni. And I will say this, I think I watched Jem Mint's review of this Omni, and he kind of convinced me that I wanted to get it and read it because, number one, he says something which I think is true. The image that they chose for this Omni and the name, if I hadn't watched his review, this was unappealing to me. I didn't think I wanted to buy this because I almost thought that it says The Exile and Other Stories makes it seem like it's just a jumble of stories they decided to put together into an omnibus. But that's not really what this is. This is all chronological, and it happens to include The Exile. That's part of it. But this immediately follows up the John Byrne stuff in those smaller hardcover books that I just showed. So if they had called this like again, quoting Jem Mint, if they had called this like Superman by Jerry Ordway and Dan Jurgens, I think this book would sell way better. So I plan on reading that. I haven't gotten started on this at all yet, but I did read this Man of Steel hardcover book by John Byrne. Now, my thoughts on this. This was actually really awesome. I love John Byrne art. He's one of my favorite all-time artists. The thing about these books, Man of Steel books, is I wish they were an omnibus. You know, these are cool, but like the paper quality isn't as good as what you get in an omnibus. So I think like when you have John Byrne art, you want to see that art oversized on quality paper, you know. But still, these are easy to pick up and read. It's a lot easier than a big bulky omnibus. So there's advantages to having it in this size and format. But I'm just holding out that one day there's going to be a omni of this whole Man of Steel run by John Byrne, and I'll upgrade to that when I get the chance. And I'll just show some of the artwork from in here real quick. So yeah, you can get if you get the Man of Steel hardcovers, all 4 volumes, like I just showed, and you get the Superman, the Exile, and Other Stories omnibus, like I just showed. That is everything leading up to this book, right? Or I should say everything leading up to this book that you can get in like omnibus or collected edition format. There is a gap between the Exile of Superman Omni and this one. It's not a huge gap, but I didn't read those before I read this, so you can go into this blind and it's totally fine. There is going to be a couple things that you read in here and you're kind of like, what is going on with that? Like for example, Supergirl is really weird inside these pages, and you're like, what? Supergirl is like an alien. She can like morph into different things. I had no idea what was going on with Supergirl when I read this book because I hadn't read this stuff before. All right, now let's get into the Death and Return of Superman. Oh yeah, huge book, by the way. So what are my thoughts on this? I have kind of mixed feelings, but I'll tell you overall good. They're overall good, but let me explain. Number one, I read comics as a small child in the 90s. I was born in 91, and I don't know if it's just like the nostalgia or just my preference. I love 90s comic book art. I love late 80s and 90s, early 90s comic book art. It's like kind of my favorite. And this is, 93 about. And the art in here does not disappoint. I mean, this stuff is perfect. It like in terms of like the kind of art that I like. Oh, look at that. You got Booster Gold in here. You have Doomsday. It's and it kind of jumps into it quick with Superman fighting Doomsday, and you don't really get an origin for Doomsday here. I actually think you don't get an origin for Doomsday in this entire omnibus. He just kind of comes out of nowhere, which is one of the things I didn't like that much about this book, is that it's a little bit unexplained. See, look, he's punching Supergirl, and it's like this. She's like, whatever she's made out of is like splattering because she can like transform herself. I have no idea. But yeah, so art gets like a 10 out of 10 probably for me. I think it is just beautiful in here, and I love like the exaggerated anatomy and stuff in 90s art, and all the pouches and leather and all that good stuff that makes 90s comics so awesome. And Lex Luthor. But now the story. My overall thoughts on the story are this. It's a bit convoluted. Oh, this is a really cool issue where Superman's dad is I guess he's possibly dying, and he's having this dream, or maybe it's not a dream, about Superman, and Superman kind of has to lead him back to life to save his life. And it's kind of left up, like I think you're supposed to be left like wondering, was that all just in Superman's dad's head? Like that was all just a dream he had, or was this something real? Because Superman's spirit, Superman was dead at this point, and his spirit was like guiding Jonathan Kent, I believe his dad's name is Jonathan Kent's, spirit back to his body or something. I don't know. So, but I did like this. Like he's, there's demons and stuff, and this was interesting. This was actually one of the stronger story points, I think, in terms of like, good storytelling. But you have the death of Superman, which let me backtrack a little bit. You have the death of Superman, which, here we go. You have perfect. This is when Superman dies, and you have this fold out, right? I'm about to say a spoiler here, but we all know this. Superman dies fighting Doomsday. Basically, they both. It's not like what happens in the Justice League movie. Basically, what happens is they both just pummel each other until they have no life force left. In the movie, there's kryptonite involved. The Batman vs Superman movie with Doomsday, he stabs Doomsday with the kryptonite spear, and then Doomsday stabs him because he's vulnerable because he's carrying the kryptonite. In this, it's more like they just have this epic battle, and they're punching, and they're throwing each other around through buildings, all this stuff, and they just keep going until there's literally no life left in either of their bodies. And Superman kind of knows that he's going to have to take it to that point, and he's okay with that. He sacrifices himself to save everyone because he realizes that this monster, he's the only one in the world that can stop it. I mean, the Justice League earlier in here just gets completely destroyed by Doomsday, and it's left up to Superman. And, like I said, basically he just does what he has to do. So that's how this kind of starts off. As you can see, I'm not super far into this, and Superman is already dead. Now, when this happened, I actually like how they included this in here. In real life, this made the news. This was on TV. Superman died in the comics. In real life, this was in newspapers and on TV and talked about and everything else like that. And that's part of the reason this event got so much good press and stuff, and was such a kind of success in a way that definitely played a part in why they did the Nightfall event with Batman. That event wasn't quite as successful as this, but they didn't do exactly the same thing, but they broke Batman's back, right? And then he was out of the picture, maybe never to return, but it was kind of piggybacking off this idea of like killing off or almost killing off one of DC's biggest characters. This time Superman in Nightfall would be Batman. So anyway, yeah, this was all over the news and stuff, which is pretty crazy that, something happening in comic books made the real life news. And then we get into the part that comes after this, which is like all the heroes are having a funeral for, here, let me skip forward. Funeral for a friend happens, right? And this is basically showing how the death of Superman has affected all these different characters, how the characters are doing, his funeral. They went into this, they really deeply dove into like what happens when Superman dies and how his life and how his death affected other DC characters. Here's a really good example of like the funeral, and you have the whole Justice League in there. You've got like Mr. Miracle and Big Barda back here in the back. A bunch of Green Lantern Corps are there, including Hal Jordan there near the front. Shazam, the Guardian, all that good stuff. Are these the Forever people? I think those are the Forever people. And then once you get past this, you start to get into this part of this omnibus, which I think is a little bit convoluted, let's say. And that is the reign of the Supermen. So that comes after the funeral. What is the reign of the Supermen? Well, basically with the death of Superman, it kind of created a hole that needed to be filled, right, by other heroes. So you start getting other Supermen that fill that hole. And those characters are Supergirl, Cyborg Superman, Hold on, let's get this a little more over here. Steel, which I love Steel. I think he's such a cool character, and I wish DC would use this character more. He's so cool. And Superboy. Am I leaving anyone out? Oh, yes, I am leaving one out, and that would be... here he is. The Eradicator, right? So these are the super people that... There's the Eradicator. Fill the void when Superman dies. Now, the problem I have with this is Supergirl's... I don't know what's going on with her during this time. She works for Lex Luthor, and she's like some kind of alien that can transform. This isn't Superman's cousin, Kara Zor-El, who eventually becomes Supergirl. This is something completely different, and I have no idea what was going on with this. And then you have the Eradicator, whose story is very weird and convoluted. He kind of gets created in the Fortress of Solitude, and he needs to like recharge his power there or something. Again, kind of weird. Superboy, who was just already around when this starts, and we don't really get an origin for what's going on with him. You have Cyborg Superman, who kind of ends up being a villain. And then you have the best character, which is Steel. He's awesome, and you have kind of an origin for him in here. At least like it gives his background and stuff. And I love seeing him. So overall, it's just a little bit like, I don't know. It's almost like reading a Grant Morrison book. And I'm a fan of Grant Morrison, by the way. I'm just saying, like, it's a lot of weird crap going on and hard to keep track of. And I'm reading through it, and I love the art, but I do see why sometimes people are like, 90s comics, the writing wasn't that good, Now I've read some 90s comics where the writing is great, but this was just, and again, that's just for me. I've seen glowing reviews of this, and again, overall, I liked this omnibus. I recommend you read this. This was a good omni, but I'm just trying to shed some light on the parts of this book that I thought were kind of a little bit weak. And then even the way Superman comes back, it's like I think they do it in such a way that it's not something that they could use again. Like this method that they use, they have to go back to the Fortress of Solitude, and his body gets restored. There's some reason that they give why it can only be done once. So at least they kind of stop this thing from becoming like the Lazarus pits. The Lazarus pits are like such a just like a plot device in DC, because anytime someone dies, you just bring them back with the Lazarus pits. So at least they didn't use that here, but it was kind of a confusing thing that they did to bring him back. I guess I've spoiled a lot of this, but I'm not going to spoil everything. But look at this art. This is why I love this book. It's the art, man, and it's just Supermen fighting and beating the crap out of each other, and oh my God, look at that. You got Steel, Eradicator, Supergirl, Superboy, just so much, Cyborg Superman, so much cool art and a lot of cool fight scenes and action and all that stuff. So if you want to read something that's just like badassery, just like action and fighting, and you're a fan of Superman, you're going to love this. Oh, here's one of the other things I didn't like. They included these annuals. This isn't the annual. Oh yeah, well, I guess it leads up to like the Eradicator fighting them, but they included these annuals about these like aliens that came down to Earth and were like abducting humans and like sucking the life out of them and getting stronger. I found myself kind of just powering through to read those stories. Yeah, here. These guys are kind of on. This is like a side thing that's going on, and they're like draining people's blood and just leaving them for dead. So with these annuals, I guess I kind of understand why they included them, because it does tie in later with the Eradicator and stuff. But to me, I was reading them and I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna power through this annual, another one of these annuals, and until I can get back to the Superman stuff, which is what I bought this omnibus for. So yeah, spoiler, he comes back. He gets resurrected at like the Fortress of Solitude or something, and he isn't at full power when he first comes back though. So, and people don't even believe it's really him at first. So they have to work together with the other Supermen that were, part of the reign of the Supermen to stop the cyborg Superman. Oh, look at this. See, I love this art so much. That's why even if I wasn't loving the story like 100%, let's give the story like, I'm going to say I'll give the story like if I had to grade it, I'd give it like a B minus, but I was able to hang in there so easily because the art was so good. At least for me, like to my eye, I just love how this art looks. And as we know, the hero always wins out in the end, for the most part, let's say. And he comes back, and we have our awesome Superman with long hair, 90s Superman with long hair. And I know he has that long hair in Grant Morrison's run of JLA, which I have also read, and I also highly recommend. I love it. So maybe, I don't know, I just saw that issue at the end there with the long hair, and I'm thinking, oh, maybe this is when he kind of has that, after he gets resurrected, he has the long hair now. I don't know. So yeah, that is the death and return of Superman. I recommend reading it. This Omni is like super great quality. It's definitely worth owning this book and paying for it and stuff like that. And like I said, I'm going to get more into Superman. I'm trying to embrace Superman more and do a little more reading. And if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and comment and share your thoughts on Superman in general. And yeah, thanks for watching.